Hey guys, welcome into this segment from our full-length The Onside Kick podcast. In order to get the full podcast, go down to the description, go to Blog Talk Radio / The Onside Kick to download the full thing. Enjoy, everybody.
This podcast is brought to you by Most Valuable Podcasts, leading the league in podcasting entertainment.
What's up, everybody? Ricky Widmer here, along with the Mark Weber.
Dub them East.
And we are back for another The Onside Kick podcast here on Most Valuable Podcast. And Mark, we were going to do, coming in today, I'm like, you know what? Do we do another trifecta of draft conversation? Mel Kiper last week came out with his 2.0. Your 2.0 going to be coming out next week. My 2.0 is already out. Check it down below in the description. We're not going to do that, though. We're not doing draft. It's all the same stuff at this point. Nothing
We're
has
going to
changed.
get more draft.
Nothing's changed until we get to the combine, though, at this point. Nothing's changed from Todd McShay to Mel Kiper. So we're going to do something different. We had a big trade go down. Julius Thomas is now in Miami. Branden Albert is now in Jacksonville. There are 7th-round picks that have been switched. However, those are two different deals. Thomas and Albert were not traded for each other. We're going to talk about that. We're going to look at Tony Romo. Where is he going to be playing next season? And then we're going to dive into some free agency because free agency opens up next Tuesday, a day after your birthday. Next week, we're going to be recording on Mark's birthday. But we're going to get into, let's just get into it right away. 2 trades went down. Basically what happened is, I want to say it's Julius Thomas and a 7th-round pick, 2017 round pick, go from Jacksonville to Miami. Branden Albert goes from Miami to Jacksonville, and a 2018 7th-rounder goes with him. 2 separate deals.
Yep,
so they were not traded for they weren't traded together.
Player for pick.
Yep. And really what we're going to focus on is the Julius Thomas. I almost said Julius Albert. The Julius Thomas side of it. Because really, the Jacksonville, I'm just going to say right now, the Branden Albert thing, really it just says, number 4, maybe they don't have to go offensive tackle now.
Yeah.
That's really all it changes.
Which is good because they really, I don't know if that was the best spot to do it. There's way better talent. We talked about it last week about how defensively strong this draft is. So now they don't have to do that, and that's great for them.
Well, and we're going to look at Julius Thomas, and I'm just going to throw it out there, Mark. Is Julius Thomas, is he the missing piece for this Miami Dolphin offense and Ryan Tannehill?
Well, you throw in the Ryan Tannehill, and that kind of ruins things.
You have to.
The reason I say it ruins things is simply because I feel like, sure, it's one thing that Ryan Tannehill needs. There's no doubt about that. He needs more weapons out there, and he's got some good wide receivers to throw the ball to. He's got a great running back there as well. You know, and the thing about the Dolphins is they weren't a bad team last year. They had some issues, obviously coaching things, but anyways, are not necessarily coaching things, but the team kind of had to get back up to speed for their new head coach. Now, the big thing for this team is I don't think he's the missing piece on offense, because I still think the missing piece on offense is most likely the quarterback. Ryan Tannehill has not stepped up.
You think they need to replace him?
Yeah, as big of a fan as I am of the Tannehills, Ryan Tannehill is not stepping up to be the guy that we all kind of wanted and expected him to be. You know, obviously he got injured this year, so that's a big part of it as well. But he's never really done it. I mean, at least Blake Bortles has shown signs that he can maybe be that guy, where Tannehill always has he does pretty well, and maybe he'll take that next step forward. He's just riding on potential, and there's only so long you can do that. We all thought that this was going to be the year where he was going to take off and be magical, but not quite.
Well, I mean, he did get injured this year. And I know it was the last 3 games were the one he missed. I mean, from this year, this was his lowest production of yards in a season. He was 5 yards away from a 3,000-yard season, dropping off from about 4,200 the year before. His yards on attempt were similar, interception numbers the same, touchdown numbers a little low, and his QBR, that's the big thing. His QBR, though, was better than it was last year. And to me, with the...
It's a 55, though.
Yeah, but I mean, it's better than a 43.5.
It's still not good. If you fail, you fail.
It's still better than it is. And the thing that I think with Tannehill part of it is, it was your first year with Adam Gase, the new head coach. This is a guy who, I mean, just look at it this way. Bears fans, we're in Chicago. You guys know it. It's one of those things where look at Jay Cutler with Adam Gase. Look at Jay Cutler without Adam Gase. Completely different quarterback. And in year 2, under the Adam Gase offense, under what he's bringing to this team, I think that this trade, what it does for the Dolphins is 2 things. Number 1, how Todd McShay and Mel Kiper had the Dolphins going with tight end low in this draft. Because let's be honest, O.J. Howard is going to be the top tight end off the draft. I mean, the Mel Kiper had him at 18 to the Titans. I don't know if the Titans do that. I'd look wide receiver and cornerback. But the guy out of Miami that's going to be number 2 in David Njoku he's the one where it's like, this kid is good. This one's going to be a weapon that people look to maybe late in that first round. This Julius Thomas trade, 1, it tells me they ain't looking tight end there anymore. They're going to go defense to me. I look linebacker. They're going to go linebacker in the draft. 2, what it says, and this is kind of lead up what we'll talk about at the end of the podcast, thanks Jordan Cameron for your time, but you can step out the door. We don't need you anymore.
Yeah, I definitely think that's a big part of it. Something to think about, too, of course, with this team. The defensive side of the ball, people were pretty happy with that, especially going into the later part of the season, even though they still didn't make the playoffs. But running game, not the issue for offense. The issue was passing the ball. And this, of course, gives Ryan Tannehill a great target to throw the ball to, especially once we're getting into the red zone. But the big question that kind of comes to my mind with this is, you send me this tweet, Ricky. You tweeted it at me at the Mark Weber.
It was the Rappaport tweet.
Yeah, and it's saying about Julius Thomas, and my first thought was, Julius Thomas. What happened to that guy? He did so well in Denver.
He went to Jacksonville.
Got paid, went to Jacksonville, which we all thought was going to be great in the offseason. And, we all got a little distracted by their fantasy numbers at the end of it, the season before in garbage time. So just kind of got paid and went off of nowhere. I want to put the little, pump the brakes, put the caution out there for fans who are remembering those Denver days. Ryan Tannehill is not Peyton Manning.
Yeah, he's not Peyton Manning, but there are 2 things that we got to look at. And one, the subscribers and the viewers and listeners are probably screaming at us right now. This was Adam Gase's tight end when he was in Denver.
Sure.
Him and Thomas have a history. Thomas can come in. He knows the offense that Gase wants to run, and they can hit the ground running. And he was a big piece in that Denver offense. Also, you look at the 2015 season when Gase was with the Chicago Bears. What did they also have? This was before they traded him. They had Martellus Bennett. So in order to have the Adam Gase offense be effective, you need a tight end. And this was the Dolphins saying, you know what? If we can go out, we can get him. Our head coach, I'm assuming Adam Gase had say in this. He was like, hey, let's go get this guy. If we can get him for the price we want, let's get him. He knows my system. I have a rapport with him. I can work with him. And then we don't have to re-sign Jordan Cameron, who has kind of been, I don't want to say like, oh, he's a failure from the experiment from Cleveland, but he hasn't been what we expected. Like when he signed in Miami, when he got to Miami, it was like, oh man, Jordan Cameron, he's finally on a team. He's not in Cleveland. He's going to do something. And it hasn't really been what we all thought it was. And now with Julius Thomas, I think that it's a guy, a receiver, a main guy that Tannehill can maybe fall on as a safety blanket, like Peyton Manning did when he was in Denver.
Yep, but that whole offense was filled with weapons with Julius Thomas. Julius Thomas was a big surprise. The thing about Martellus Bennett, too, 2015, an injury year for Martellus Bennett. Anyone in Chicago will remember that.
Only played 11 games.
Only played 11 games, but also only 400 39 yards.
But I mean, even take that. Zach Miller stepped in, and that tight end. What I'm saying is that tight end position is a valuable one with the Adam Gase offense.
But my thing is that Adam Gase didn't turn Martellus Bennett into amazingness.
No,
Martellus Bennett's good season was before that. His best season of his career was the year before.
I'm just
Gase
saying
showed
he
up.
had a quality player at the tight end position, and even in Zach Miller did a fine job filling in for Bennett. Were the Bears a great team? No, but it was the one thing. That's an important position in this offense.
It is, but I don't. I'm not saying it's going to be terrible. I'm just saying we should all pump the brakes. I don't think that everybody should expect great things out of the Miami Dolphins all of a sudden.
Well, they still need other receivers.
Yeah.
They do. I mean, Devonta Parker, to me, hasn't, he's shown flashes.
We expected more.
We expected more, especially out of his rookie year. Kenny Stills, he's a free agent right now. And it's one of those things, are you going to bring him back? Right now, the only 4 receivers that they have on the roster, according to our lads and their depth chart, Devonta Parker, Kenny Stills, but like I said, he's a free agent. And then they also have Leonte Carrou and then Rashawn Scott. Those are the only receivers they have right now.
They don't have Landry right now?
They have Landry and Grant. I didn't look at the slot. So they have Landry and Grant along with that. So really you've got Parker and Landry and Stills if you re-sign them.
So, I mean, it's not terrible. It's not a terrible wide receiving group that you have. Not great, but
you might be able to go out there and get somebody. Victor Cruz. Victor.
I don't know, though. Victor Cruz
if you can bring him in for cheap, for a little cheap.
But is he going to play? I mean, injury has been a big issue for him. Even when he was fine,
all depends on how much moolah
anybody can get open when Odell Beckham Jr. is on the opposite side, and Victor Cruz still couldn't get it done?
Except for Wubin Wandle.
Yeah.
Wubin Wandle could not.
So, I don't know. I don't know if I believe in Victor Cruz. And I was a believer in the resurgence of Victor Cruz because of circumstance. And it really didn't happen. So I don't know if I'm going to buy in on that either. If you want to keep the Adam Gase thing and the Chicago thing going when we were talking about Martellus Bennett earlier, make a shot at Alshon. Why not?
Well, that's a big thing.
There's your weapon.
The one thing, and this is all going to, the big thing that comes down from now until Tuesday is who gets franchise tagged. Because right now I am looking at, and of course, this is off of salary. This isn't off of production. I could probably go to yards last season. And right now, the unrestricted free agents, according to, I'm looking at spotrac.com, you've got Pierre Garçon could be a free agent. Deshaun Jackson could be a free agent. Alshon could. Ted Ginn Jr., Kenny Britt. Victor Cruz, we already know, has been let go by the Giants. There are some guys out there that if they don't get franchise tagged or re-signed with their teams, there are some guys right now before free agency that the Dolphins could go after. And they could also go after a wide receiver in the draft as well.
Yeah, so, it's going to be interesting to see because of the free agency that's coming up, because of those guys that do stay with their teams. And then with the NFL draft coming up, if the Miami Dolphins wanted a wide receiver, they are in a pretty good position to where they could get, they're not going to get one of the top 2-3 guys. But they can still get a quality wide receiver. I don't think that's the right move. I think go on the defensive side of the ball, improve that.
Are you talking draft?
Yeah.
Is that what you're talking about?
Yeah, I'm saying that they're in a prime spot where they could get some talent. On the defensive side of the ball, they can get some talent as a wide receiver position too. Maybe they'll hope that your wild dream and your mock draft comes true and Corey Davis drops.
Well, and that's the thing
That's a good situation there.
And that's what I was going to throw out there because it depends on who you look at. If you look at Todd McShay, he has Corey Davis in the top 5 or in the top 5 going to Tennessee
number 5.
At number 5. Then he's got Mike Williams going a little bit later, whereas Mel Kiper's got Mike Williams going 14. That's a top wide receiver. Corey Davis going 19. And one guy that he has that Todd McShay didn't. And this is a guy that I kind of before the podcast was like, let's see if we can talk a little bit about him. I'll throw him in here because they have Julius Thomas, sure up that kind of tight end position. Is it possible that I know it's depending on a good combine performance, a good pro day performance?
Yep,
wherever
exactly.
he can get some good plays in. is Zay Jones going to be a guy that could maybe rise to 22? Because the one thing I know, we heard it here in Chicago from our sports radio, the Bears staff, because they got to coach him at the Senior Bowl, fell in love with this kid.
Yeah, and I think a lot of people were really impressed with him. Mm-hmm. The thing is, like you said, it's all going to depend on the pro day and the combine. We need to see a little bit more because everyone was like, this kid can play. But what they need to see is, yes, this kid will translate to the NFL and will be good on the team. So right now, I have him slotted like second round because I think he has built his way up, and some team is going to think that he's a steal. Whether he is or he isn't, we'll find out. But I think a team will say he's a steal. We're going to grab him in the second.
And also on the offensive side, last thing I kind of want to mention is we've talked about the receivers. Now that, like I'm going to say again, that tight end to me is shored up because you would like to think that, like I said, a guy in Thomas knows the system of Adam Gase, and you're confident in that. Is Jay Ajayi going to have the same or a similar season that he had in 2016? Well, that is a fair question to ask.
It is, and especially when you're looking at shaking up, Branden Albert is no longer part of this team, left tackle. So you have things changing. Is Tunzel going to get moved over to tackle?
God, what if Cam Robinson falls like he has in mock drafts? Then later on at 22, do you take Cam Robinson to fill that Albert hole? But there's a lot of things you can do.
You'll definitely have some people saying you created a hole on the team, but I'm going to say that Branden Albert, even though he's a 2-time Pro Bowler, older player, I think it was like his 9th season, 9th, 10th, something like that. So older player, so definitely getting younger is good, and this is a team that has shown that they are wanting to invest in the offensive line. Which is definitely good. And I also just say that, Bushrod being a part of an offensive line doesn't excite me that much.
Well, apparently for our lads, he's a free agent, so they got to have to re-sign him.
So they got to re-sign him if they want him. So, yeah, it's certainly something that you can do. The thing for the Miami Dolphins is right now, they have officially become one of those teams where you really have no clue what the next step is until free agency. So until the draft.
Until next week.
Yeah, so for the draft is what I'm trying to say. We have no idea what they're going to do until they start making those moves because there's holes at the offensive line. They need weapons to throw to. Defense needs some ways to go. We need to see where their priorities are to start to understand what they want to do next.
And the last thing I want to throw in here is I said that we were mainly going to focus on the Dolphins, but I want to throw a little bit in about the Jaguars because they were also the other team in this trade. They give up Julius Thomas. They bring in a left tackle in Albert. The one question I want to ask for them is what does this do? Because let's be honest, my mock draft changes completely. I had them going offensive tackle with the number 4 overall pick because I thought that, safety's a need, but you can get it later. You need an offensive tackle, and this is not a very deep offensive tackle draft. Now that they have Albert, if you are in the war room for Jacksonville, and I know free agent's going to trade anything, but just because of this trade, where do you go if you're Jacksonville?
Well, it's tough now because I always was in the impression that you go defense anyways, because it is so defensive heavy.
So
defensive strong.
Adams or Hooker, whoever.
Yeah, whichever one's there. But you got to, and I don't think that the first round at number 4 overall is where you do this, but you got to look at it. And like I said, Julius Thomas disappeared when it came to Jacksonville, but he's not.
Are you going to take O.J. Howard at 4?
No, you're definitely not going to do that. And like I said, you still go defense at 4. But when it comes to that second round, all of a sudden, because Robinson and Hearns are great players, but they did not do what we kind of hoped they would do with Bortles. So
hoping a Zay Jones is there.
They might be a team that does take that. We think we got the steal here because you have all these teams, or if Howard doesn't go in the first round, you have a new hole that you need. You need a new playmaker on the offensive side of the ball because Blake Bortles has shown that he needs a lot of help. His team doesn't really believe in him. They're just kind of stuck with him by default right now. And he needs something. I mean, we've been saying it year after year that he needs to get those weapons so he can prove himself. And we thought that last year he had the weapons so he could prove himself, and it didn't happen. We thought we were a little silly and a little early to talk about was it the make or break year for Blake Bortles. It nearly was. So I don't know. The Jacksonville Jaguars.
The Jackson Jaguars.
Might as well at this point. You guys got to go with defense. I think all four teams, really, well, all five teams, really, with Tennessee as well, probably should go defense right off the bat. But obviously, there's not enough players to do that.
The only one I'm going to disagree with you there is Tennessee, only because... and this
the other ones will be gone by that time.
Well, and this is in my mind of they are in the unique position of they have 2 draft picks, and really their 2 biggest needs are wide receiver and corner. Which one's more deeper? The cornerback position. Push that off to the second pick in that round. Go get your wide receiver. Make your pick of Davis and Williams. That's what I think. That's what I'm sitting right now. But obviously, like you said, free agency is going to change all this.
Yeah, and you guys heard it here first. The cornerback position is more deeper, according to Ricky.
Yeah, well, it's deeper. It's more deeper. But
it is more deeper.
This is where you guys come in, though. Let us know down below. What do you think this means for Jacksonville? What do you think this means for the Dolphins moving forward? And is Julius Thomas the missing piece for this Dolphin offense? Well, I hope you guys enjoyed that segment from the onside kick. If you think the fun stops there, you're wrong, because click the video right over here. What are you thinking? Come on. Click it. It's going to go away. It's going to go away. Bye, everybody.